Today we're going to take a look at my first ever laser engraver. This was really exciting for me because there was a lot of learning required, and what I'm going to do in this video is share all that with you so that if you're also new to laser engraving, you can get up and running pretty quickly. So this came about when one of my good contacts, Jasmine, got in touch with me and offered to send me one of these machines to experiment with and feature in some educational videos. I jumped at this opportunity given it was a chance to learn something new, and I thought it'd fit in with my channel content very well. So a special thank you to Banggood for being patient and sponsoring me with this machine. I really do appreciate it, and I'm going to put it to the test in this video. Before we dive into it, let's take a look at who this machine is for. So I'd say this is an entry-level machine aimed at people who want to learn the tools of the trade when it comes to CNC lasers. So if you're a beginner like me and you're looking to learn, this machine is potentially a great option. That being said, it does have some impressive capability that would allow you to farm this machine in a small CNC business. So here's the machine over on Banggood. It is actually on sale at the moment on a huge discount. I'm just going to briefly go over the machine, some of its features. You can look at this yourself, but it boasts to be a very capable machine. So we've got a roughly 5-watt laser that has the equivalent performance of a 100-watt CO2 laser according to their description. Electric power 40 watts. It has a roughly 5-watt laser. You can cut, you can engrave. It's focus free, which means that it has a fixed focus. This is awesome, and I'll get to that further in the video when I show you the setup. Easy to install. It supports offline engraving, which is also great, and it does actually come with a small touchscreen display that allows you to navigate through the menus on there and engrave offline. It's able to achieve that high power effect using quadruple laser compression technology. It has an aluminium body, it's very well built. I can attest to that after experimenting with the machine. And this one's a big one for me, 32-bit motherboard, and I believe there's an STM32 microcontroller in there. And if you've watched any of my other videos, I'm a huge fan of ST, and it's nice to see these kind of Chinese products steering away from the likes of Arduino. Because it's a switch to a 32-bit board, it's able to support that offline engraving and become its own little embedded system, which I think is fantastic. It does also claim here that it supports a wide range of materials, so I'm going to test out some of those. So let's dive into it and get the unboxing and assembly done. The laser arrived in one piece and everything was very well packaged. On the top you're greeted with some user manuals and a protective steel sheet for when you're doing cuts. The total contents of the box are this laser module itself, the actual onboard computer that does all the processing for the laser, the capacitive touch display, which also came with a short HDMI lead that allows the feedback between the screen and the main board. Power supply was also included with a standard cable and an appropriate European adapter. It came with a bag of accessories and tools which are actually very useful. There's a communication lead for if you're interfacing directly from a computer to the board. So everything out of the box, this is what you get. I took apart the toolkit, and as you can see, everything's broken down into steps which follows the user manuals. The gantry itself is pretty much self-assembled. It was really easy to put together. It also includes these little plates which are standoffs for the laser so that it's not sat directly on the ground. I highly recommend checking out the user manual before you even attempt to use the laser or build it. It has step-by-step guide that I recommend you follow. There's also an additional manual for interfacing to the laser via an app. There is an AtomStack laser engraving app which you can use. I didn't experiment with this too much personally, as my main source of interfacing to the machine is through a piece of software like Lightburn. The machine is extremely straightforward to assemble, and when you're done you should have something that looks like this. As I said, the user manuals make it so easy to set up. It's broken down step by step and you can't really go wrong. If you've never worked with lasers before, please do be aware that the fumes are very strong. We're so used to 3D printers these days where you can print materials such as PLA out in the open without a care in the world. But that's not the case with lasers. And based on my prior research, it's definitely worth taking extra measures to try and extract those fumes. I think this tends to steer people away from lasers, but it's relatively easy to create your own enclosure which solves that problem. I managed to do this using some 11mm OSB cutoffs that I had lying around after building my workshop. I used Perspex sheets on the top and the front so that I could always see what job was running, and I even added an extraction system that I partly 3D printed which extracts all those fumes out through a ventilation tube and outside. The total cost of the enclosure was less than £50 and it works perfectly. I will be creating another in-depth video on the enclosure which should follow this one. Another important thing that I feel like I should cover in this video is eye protection. No matter what laser you buy, it should always come with safety instructions, so please read them. One of the things I actually really credit this laser for is its attempt to limit your exposure to the laser. With this being a fixed focus laser, you never have to manually calibrate the laser focus, which on some other machines requires you to wear safety goggles and look directly at the laser until your focus is correct. For example, when I fire the laser here, you can see on the front that there's protective screening, so it makes it really difficult to make direct eye contact with that bright laser dot. Then when it comes to focusing the laser, AtomStack include this small piece of acrylic, and the thickness of the acrylic sets the laser focus perfectly. All you do is slide the acrylic underneath the laser and on top of your laser engraving surface. You lower the laser down, clamp it in place and simply remove it. So much easier than other methods where you have to manually calibrate that small dot. Given that this is a 2-axis machine, you don't have to worry about any Z-axis movement. So the two things that you can control are the speed of both the X and Y axes and the power of the laser module itself. So when it comes to testing these variables, after doing some research, I found out that you can create these laser tests in software packages such as Lightburn, where you create an array of squares and you apply different power and speed settings to each square in the array. This way you can test all of your different settings at once on a single piece of stock material and not have to keep doing iterative laser burns, which would not only waste material but also waste time. I will be creating a separate tutorial on how to create these tests, so keep your eyes out for that. I ran this test on 2 different pieces of wood. First one I tried was plywood and the second one was MDF. Here are the results, and as you can see they differ quite a bit. Every material will look slightly different, and each time you try a new material you can then run this test to see how it performs. As you'd expect, high power and low speed are going to basically come into cutting territory, and if you're going to try and engrave some kind of image with that, it's basically just going to burn the material. You can use these little tests almost like a bit of a colour palette, so that when you do come to do engravings, you can pick your material, pick your tone, pick your settings, and off you go. I did exactly that, and I decided to do some test engravings on some small images on both materials. Doing these smaller images is a great idea if you plan to eventually create a larger burn, which I did in this case. It just gives you an idea of how it's going to look before you go ahead and waste a lot of time and material. After some more tests with the smaller images, I picked a setting that I really liked and I tried to do a slightly bigger engraving. As you can see here in Lightburn, you can see a preview of your job before it processes, and if you zoom all the way in you can see the patterns that it creates, which is just essentially lines. You can change this to be dots as well. There's a lot of flexibility in this software. As the images get bigger, the grain in the wood has less of an effect on the quality, and you'll see that later on when I did a larger A3 engraving. Overall, I was extremely pleased with the results of these, and hopefully this will show you the process of just how you build up the confidence with the material you're working with and your laser settings. In preparation for a larger A3 engraving, I decided to do some more smaller tests. This is the image I decided to go for the larger engraving. So I got back into Lightburn, I set that up, and I decided to go with a speed of 2000 and a power of 40%. This engraving took a total of 10 hours to complete, so it's quite a long job, but I let it run and I think the results speak for themselves. You can really see just how detailed the photo is here, and that's another key tip for engraving, is that your photo quality really matters. You know, if you put a junk image in, you're going to get a junk image out. So quality in equals quality out, and I'm going to do some more tutorials on that in the future. This is the A3 engraving in action, and it was honestly fascinating to watch this one come to life. The detail is extremely impressive, and being such a big image, it really does stand out on the material. Here is the final result, and honestly this blew me away. I could not believe that such a hobbyist grade machine can produce an output like this. Just look at the detail, it's incredibly impressive, and as I said, a lot of that comes from the pre-processing and the original quality of the image, and I will be making tutorials about that in the future. but I mean, I think the colour grade's perfect, and I think the testing leading up to this final one was definitely worth it. Overall, extremely pleased, and this is a gift for somebody, and I think they're going to love it as well. So next up, I made an attempt at cutting. Now with cutting, it's a little bit different. You still set your power and speed, but you have another variable, which is pass count. So when cutting, you basically tell the machine to follow the same path multiple times. And if you follow the path enough, you will eventually cut through the material. So what you need to find out is how many passes does it take at a specific setting to make it through the material. So to do this, I set up a basic test where I'm cutting out little squares, and what I've done is I've set the power and the speed to be the same, but I increased the pass count by 5 for each of the squares. I managed to cut out this little ruler as a test as well, but above that there are 5 little squares, and each of them, as I said, a number of different passes. 15 passes was the sort of optimal to make it through the material. Just bear in mind that each material is going to be different based on its thickness and its properties. So wherever you're going to be cutting, you need to figure out these settings for yourself and for your machine. But once you've figured it out, you use the same settings over and over, and you just add it to your workflow. It's also worth noting as well that generally you shouldn't run your laser at 100% power too often, if at all. You're just going to burn your laser out faster with no real gain. For the most part, if you use too much power when cutting, you're just going to get burn marks unless you have an air assist system. I also decided to try some additional materials for engraving. There's a cork placemat. There's also leather coasters along with slate coasters. For these tests, I just decided to have a look on the web and see where I could find for free. I found some great websites, one called Icon Archive and one called SVG Repo, and there's another one called DXF Downloads, which is another fantastic site, but you do have to earn credits or buy credits and then use those credits to download models, and it's definitely worth checking out. For the leather coasters, I found a nice SVG of this Atom, and I set the speed to 3000 and a power of 40%, and for the slate I did a similar type of one, which is a little solar system at a speed of 1500 and a power of 40%. These turned out really well, and this was just my first attempt. The slate is definitely my favourite, but the engravings also look great on the leather coasters. It's pretty cool to have a machine that can do this type of thing. The only real limitation is your imagination. As for the cork, I decided to tackle another image engraving. I did this at a speed of 2000mm per minute and a power of 40%. I actually recorded the whole thing, so I was able to create this cool time lapse. Another challenge here with engraving is centering up your workpiece with a laser. I was slightly out on this attempt, but I'm going to create a tutorial for that. I've mastered it since doing this, and I think it's a great thing to know. The results here were pretty impressive. Cork generally is quite a tricky material to work with when it comes to the laser. It has quite a texture to it, so to get real detail in it is pretty tricky, but I think this did a pretty good job. So to close out the video, I have to say this machine really did impress me. As a beginner who'd never owned a laser before, it was very easy to assemble, and it came with great software and hardware manuals that made the starting process very easy. In terms of actual performance, there isn't much that this machine can't do. The only thing you're limited by is speed and power, which is always going to be the case with these hobbyist type machines. For example, if you wanted to start and run a scalable laser engraving business, you'd need to buy an industrial grade machine, which would set you back thousands. That's not to say you couldn't run a business with a machine like this. Just be aware that it'll take a little more time for each job that you do. However, like I said, if you're looking to dive into lasers and genuinely want to learn the tools of the trade, this machine is an excellent choice. It's already served a great purpose for me, and I'm now able to follow up this video with other laser related videos and tutorials which you can guarantee I will be doing. It's also worth noting as well that this machine is upgradable, and there are a lot of accessories that you can purchase for it. I'm hoping to get my hands on a few of those as well, which I can feature in some videos. So you can essentially make this machine as long as you want to, or as wide as you want to, as long as you can account for it in the software. AtomStack actually offer a upgrade accessory package here, which comes with the extended cables, the extended belts, and the additional extrusion, so that you can increase the length of the laser to 850mm. And straight away I think that's pretty awesome. It shows that they're looking to improve the product still in the future. You can also get accessories such as this honeycomb working table, which is great for cutting. There's also an air assist system that you can buy, which allows you to cut at higher power. and use air assist to prevent burning. And you can also get a rotary roller so that you can engrave on things like cans and bottles, and there are some examples of that here. If I scroll down, you can see you can go ahead and do stuff like this. So all in all, this machine is pretty damn impressive, and I'm really excited to get my hands on some of those accessories. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can become a website member, or alternatively, if you do like this machine, you can purchase via the links in my video description below. That helps me out financially, and it also allows me to keep receiving products like this to create videos about. So I'd really appreciate it if you decided to do that. You don't have to, but it would help me out at no extra cost to you. So keep learning, keep working hard, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.